Okay, my name is Elizabeth Akers Moore, Chair of the Concord Zoning Board of Appeals, and I'm calling the public meeting to order at 7 p.m. on this August 3rd,
Opening the hearing.
2020. Dad, mute yourself. In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order of March 12, 2020, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are conducting this meeting virtually. This meeting is being recorded. Following the presentation by the applicant, for which I will allow the town planner or the applicant to share the screen if they wish to make their own presentation, the board will ask questions of the applicant. Following this, the chair will ask, that's me, will ask for public comment. Consistent with the select board's temporary policy directive and guidelines for public meeting and public hearings conducted via remote participation due to COVID-19 state of emergency, the public is invited to view the meeting as an attendee only and will not be permitted video access. Excuse me. If an attendee has a question during the public comment period for each application, they can use the raise hand function and they will be unmuted one attendee at a time so they can ask their question. Questions will be answered to the extent possible. All video screens will be turned off with the exception of the board, town planner, and the current applicant. Once the board has acted on an application, the applicant will be returned to an attendee and is free to leave the meeting. At this time, I would ask for a roll call vote of the board members. Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Kindermans.
Aye.
Mr. Faia. Hi. Can you unmute, Bobby? Okay, great. So only Mr. Smith, Mr. Kindermans, and I will be voting on each application, except that I have a conflict of interest in two of these, in which time I will designate Ravi as the alternate member. Let's go ahead and get started with our 7 p.m. hearing. JP Chase Morgan for special permit and site plan approval. The applicant has asked for a continuance. That continuance would be until, I'm sorry, what's the date of our next meeting?
September 10th.
September 10th and 7 p.m. Do we have anything? So I'd ask for a motion.
I make a motion to continue the hearing on JP Chase Morgan Bank for special permanent site plan approval on the section 7.2, 11.6 and 11.8 of the zoning bylaw to demolish the existing bank building, construct a new bank building, and perform related site improvements, including parking reconfiguration, drive-through ADM, and stormwater management updates in the floodplain conservancy district at 1134 Main Street, parcel 3790-1.
I second that, but I'll also note, I second that, but I'll also note that I'm not going to actually be able to be at that September 10th meeting.
Okay, duly noted. Mr. Kindermans. Aye. Or no?
Aye.
Yes. Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And Ms. Akers Moore. Aye. Great. Since it is only 7:04, I think we'll go ahead and do this decision on the PRD. This is the decision deliberation for 1651, 1657, and 165X Main Street PRD. We've all received it. We all submitted comments. Does anyone want to start with any conversation or comments? My comments were reflected in Heather's update.
And I did read the decision, and I have no further comments.
No, I'm all set as well.
Ravi?
Yeah, sorry, my connection's a little choppy, so apologies if I'm in or out. I'm good with the decision.
Great. Do we need to vote then? Correct, Heather? Yes. All right. So I will take a motion.
I would move that we adopt the written decision of the board on as submitted at this meeting on the PRD project located at 1651, 1657, and 165X Main Street, Concord, Massachusetts.
I second that motion.
Great. Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Kindermans?
Aye.
Ms. Akers Moore? Aye. Great. Moving right along. 7:05. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Just thank you, everybody.
Oh, right, Dan. Sorry. Thank you.
Take your
Sorry,
time.
I'm just like full speed ahead here, Dan, you know. All right, 7:05 p.m. Aaron Desatnik and Jenna Levy. I think I saw Aaron is here.
Yes. Do you want me to share video or I can just talk?
Up to you.
There we are.
There,
Hi. I apologize for the background. I'll do a little introduction, then Paul Mahoney, who's on the call, can do more of an introduction. Aaron Desatnik, we live in Concord at 5 Ledge Rock Road. We are, as of about 4 hours ago, a family of 6. We just had our child this afternoon, so again, apologize for the background.
Congratulations. And that's a
Thank
very
you.
dirty trick to ask us to vote on something. And
He was not due for another 2 weeks, so it was not planned.
Yeah. No. Congratulations.
Thank you. We moved to Concord about 2.5 years ago. We renovated 5 Ledge Rock Road, which was a small garrison house, and for our large family, our planned large family. And, it ends up that because of COVID and some other factors, I'm working from home full time and my wife's a full-time mom. And so we are looking to extend our roof by about 3 feet past the allowable height to have an office attic upstairs and have my office become a room for the baby, basically. There's really no other options for space to put that, and Paul can go into the detail. I believe 3 of our 3 abuttering neighbors sent letters of support, which I don't know if that'll be mentioned, and Paul can get into the details. But nice to meet you all, and thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Great. Thanks.
Good, thank you, Aaron. Heather, can you allow my video to open? Great, thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
hi, Heather, this is Stu Freeland. I'm online so I can hear, but I can't see anything. Because on my phone, I have the television screen. I have my computer screen in front of me, but I don't know how to get into the picture on my computer.
So you can't see us either, Stuart?
No, I can't see you. I can hear you, but I can't see you.
That's probably fine for now. I apologize. What you're presenting is what's given to us in the application
Yep.
material. Okay.
Exactly. I'm not adding anything visually, so everything that you have on your website is what I'm going to refer to.
Perfect.
Heather, can I ask you to share a couple images as I go along? If you could just show that GIS map first. There you go.
I'm not sure which one it is.
No, it's actually 5 Ledge Rock is the application.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. So if you go down to 5 Ledge Rock,
Go to the right.
and
Here we go.
then it says GIS map right there. Great, thank you. So I just wanted to sort of locate the property. So I've been working with Aaron and Jenna for a few months trying to help them figure out how to create some office space in this house. It was actually, I think, like late March when we first met, right after all the COVID stuff started. So the property is number 5. It's at the very end of Ledge Rock Lane or Ledge Rock Road. And so if you're familiar with that area off of Lowell Road, it's that very long road that goes back into the woods, and they're at the very back end of that road. So Ledge Rock kind of winds way back there, and there's a cul-de-sac at the very end, and they're located at the very back of that cul-de-sac at number 5. And so you can see the location of their property and the relationship to other houses, and their house is set sort of in the middle of that site. It's actually a large lot. It's a AA zoning district, so 80,000 square feet required. And they have a little over 115,000 square feet, so about 1.5 times the size required for that district. And the lay of the land there sort of slopes away from you a little bit. So as you come down Ledge Rock, some of the homes are up higher than you and some of them are down lower. And their house sort of sits sort of flattish to lower-ish. The ground is sloping away from that cul-de-sac to the back of their lot. So that just gives you a big sort of overview of where they're located. And then Heather, if you could pull up the file that says photos. Great, thank you. So the first photo there is a view from about halfway down the driveway. And some of you may have driven by the property, but this gives you an idea of what the house looks like. And basically what is there, as you can see, the existing house was on the right, that sort of long roof, the low slung roof. And then there were pieces of this house that were there to the left, and Aaron and Jenna did some very significant renovations to the home and additions to the home. And that whole left piece was modified and added on to. And so I think that was about 4 years ago that they completed that work. And so you can see how the ground sort of slopes away on the left. And this is what I'll talk about in the application, in that the existing house has a very low sloped roof. And you can't really even stand up in there. As you read the zoning bylaw, the lowest point on this house, you can see it there on the far left, is sort of a basement level garage. And then the ground quickly slopes up back to the house. So the area that we're talking about putting this new roof is over the main house where those 5 second-story windows are. We're not touching the connector piece nor the barn-like piece where the garage is. And then Heather, if you can just scroll down, we can look at the second photo there at the bottom of this page. So that's the view from the back. And so you can see how the land works there. It's pretty level all the way across the back of the house. And again, this roof piece that we're talking about is on the left side of that upper roof, sort of centered on that bay that pops out in the middle of the back wall, and where the pergola is, and that barn-like structure, we're not touching that part of the house. So that gives you a good sense also of how the land, the grading is working around the house. So Heather, if you could go on to the floor plans. So these first drawings show the existing condition of the house, and this shows you the heights at the house. So that height on the right-hand side is 26 foot 3 inches. That's from grade at right up to the existing ridge. And then at the left side, that shows the grades from the garage doors up to the barn height, which is 31.8, and then to the main house ridge, which is 32 feet 2 inches. If you scroll down, Heather, we can see the rear elevation. See how that works. And then you can continue down. We'll see the right-hand side. And then if you go a little bit further, you'll see the sections. So you've probably already looked at these in the application. The section on the left is showing the existing condition. So that's a 6-foot person standing in the attic. So you can see you can't even stand up in the attic. And the drawing on the right shows how tall we can make that attic, working with the 35 foot requirement going to the far left side of the house where the garage entry is. So we can lift this roof up, but we get very little space due to the unique conditions around this house. And in fact, all we're really able to create is a 3'5" width of zone of space in that attic that would be 7 foot tall. And then we could bump out some shed dormers at the back, but those would be as restricted or even further restricted to get a little bit of slope on those roofs for drainage. So that just shows you the tightness of everything on this house. And the further constraint to this is that to get any significant space in there, as much as we could, we'd have to do structural ridges in this new attic, which we'd then have to point load down throughout the house, which is very challenging due to the renovations that were done a few years ago, that a lot of the spaces were opened up inside the house. So we would have to basically go back in and open up and rip apart a lot of things that were just recently done. And how we would actually bring those point loads through, I'm not sure it would be possible in a few areas without introducing some significant pieces of steel, if even that were possible, which I'm not sure that it is. So all of this led us to what we're requesting, which is, if you go down to the next drawing, Heather, we looked at this and said, well, what can we do if we raise this roof up to something that would be minimally practical to get some space up in that attic, and what would that do height-wise? So that's the front elevation that we're looking at. And the dimensions that are shown there are, the far left dimension shows that the height that that new ridge would be to the lowest point, which would be 38 foot 2 inches. So that would be 3 foot 2 inches above the 35 foot height. And then the elevation at the far right shows what that ridge would be at the grades that surround this section of the building, which would be 31 foot 10 inches high. So significantly less than the 35 foot height at that area of the building. And then if you scroll down a little bit, Heather, you can see the rear elevation. So that's what it would look like from the backyard. So same ridge height, and then we would have 2 shed dormers facing the rear. And then Heather, if you scroll down a little bit further, we can see the side elevation, the right side. And then there's the sections that would be created in that proposed ridge height. So now you can see where that 6 foot person is. Now we have a more practical amount of space to create an office so that Aaron and Jenna can continue working from home with their larger family. And the drawing at the right shows where a section of the shed dormer would be. So that sort of shows you what the constraints are, how limiting the existing ridge height is, given the nature of that site, and what we're requesting. And I think that I tried to summarize, in my opinion, what is unique about this application on the second page of the narrative. And because I know that, the current zoning was thoughtfully considered and makes a lot of sense. I support it. I think it's a great idea to be, trying to create some conditions which can be, appropriate for most locations. But I think in this case, there are some unique things happening that, support the notion of trying to support this in a way that is very specific to this particular location. So I summarized those on the second page, and they are, just to highlight them, the lowest existing grade is at the attached structure, which is separated from the area of where the new roof connector would be, where the new roof would be. And that would be separated by the connecting structure between the new roof and that low point of the garage. The height from the lowest existing grade to the roof above that new point is less than 35 feet. The height of the new roof structure is less than 35 feet at the grade surrounding where that new roof is going to be. The home is located in the AA district, the largest district in town. And in fact, the site, it far exceeds the requirement of land for that area. The house is located in a unique spot at the very end of a cul-de-sac that's not very commonly found, and is in a relatively remote location. And the existing home is set back significantly from the street and angled away from the street, and oriented in such a way that the new roof is actually further from the closest neighbor than the existing roof that's going to remain. And lastly, I'd say we explored alternative locations for a home office at the first floor, but the nature of the way this house was redesigned is such that there's no logical place. There's porches, there are areaways opening to basement spaces that are required for egress, or other constraints that don't allow us to find a logical place to add onto the first floor. So in our opinion, the attic is the logical place, and that the request for the special permit for the height in this unique location is modest, all things considered. So that is my overview of the home and what we're requesting. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. That was a very clear presentation. Any comments, questions from the board?
Yeah, I have one, if I could. I recognize that this is characterized as a special permit, but I think that what we're actually being asked to do here, if I read the zoning bylaw right, and I'll ask Elizabeth for this question, or Ray, is right in 6.2.11. It says that the board can grant relief from the definition of height, and it feels to me like that's what we're granting relief from, in a way. And there's some standards there for that, which I'm happy to go into after the public hearing comment, and because I think that this particular site meets those standards. But to me, we've run into these height requirements before. It's not entirely clear that a special permit covers the height requirement. It seems that it may be a variance, which is a much higher and more difficult standard. But it's also the case that I think that unique among our zoning bylaw is a provision right in the middle of 6.2.11 that allows us to grant relief from the definition. And if you look at this, it's sort of it's an odd situation, because if the garage and other structure were separated from the house, for example, the definition for this entire house would be, the entire house you'd be able to put this roof in there easily within that definition. So it just seems like a situation that may call for that, but I'd love to hear if somebody else is reading that the way I am, or what.
Anyone else on the board want to respond to that?
I'm just. Oh, go ahead, Theo.
No, go ahead.
I'm also thinking back to when we had town council advise us on whether the standard in 6.2.11 was different from the standard for a variance when we were looking at the PRD that was denied. And I vaguely remember that the advice was it's pretty much the same standard,
Right.
at least in terms of looking at reasonable alternatives. But, it sort of cuts both ways for me, because it's like, okay, you made it bigger by slapping an addition on one side with a big garage. Now that garage is what's shooting up in the foot when you add another story on.
Oh,
I
Robbie,
struggle a little bit with this.
Sorry.
yeah, so Robbie, you're cutting in and out. So I want to make the distinction. So you cannot compare this single family dwelling, which in the residence, AA zone district falling under the 6.2.11, you cannot compare that to the PRD requirements, because 6.2.11, and this gets back to Jim's question on the difference between special permit variance. 6.2.11 has specifically this waiver provision that if the board makes those findings, can grant relief to the definition of height and how height is defined. And height is defined by this measurement, the two lowest base elevations, existing grade. The difference with the variance is that there is no waiver provision in the section 10, the PRD provisions, and it specifically states a maximum height of 35 feet. There is no waiver provision. So that is why for a PRD, you would be looking for a variance. For a single family dwelling, you would be looking for this relief that is provided that the board can grant under 6211.
Yeah, Ravi, I remember that too, Elizabeth, and I think I'm remembering correctly that was the problem, is that we couldn't apply the standard, and town council said that we couldn't use it under the PRD provision, section 10. So I am tending to agree with you, Elizabeth, that basically, to simplify it, all we're saying is that if that other part wasn't chopped off, then that would continue, and we're just saying that that's the height. We're not using that dip, which we can say is kind of an anomaly. Theo, did you have anything? Oh, you're muted.
I'm all set now, thanks.
Robbie, does that make sense? I remember that differently from you.
Yeah, no, that is helpful, and it makes more sense. Why would this be in the bylaw if it wasn't intended to give you an avenue other than a variance to get around the height definition? So,
right. We were trying to apply to the PRD, but couldn't get there.
Right.
And it's also, I think it's the same thing that we did with that lot on Highland Street, which was somewhat related to the PRD, but it was really a single family house situation where they had the very steep drop off in the back of all of those houses, and the situation where the house that they were trying to construct would have been sort of perfectly within the keeping of all of the rest of the houses in the area from what you would look at from the front of the house. But because everyone had all these drop-offs, that was an issue about whether or not
although I thought that was a variance.
Well, it may have been, and maybe we didn't read this, but all I'm saying is that I think it's the same idea. This is a single home. It's got one lot. There isn't a lot of things that you can do with it. And, for better or for worse, here we are. So I think my only point, I think, is that rather than thinking about the special permit standards or the variance standards, I think the right thing to think about is the standards in 6.2.11, which is that there, again, this language, which I find very troubling within our bylaws to begin with, because I'm not sure I understand it, that the literal requirement or the literal application of the requirement would be unreasonable because there's no reasonable alternatives available, and that the desired relief might be granted without substantial detriment to the neighborhood and without derogation from the intent and purpose of the bylaw. I think, we'll have a discussion, we still have public comment, but I don't have any problem with the second part on this. And I think that Mr. Mahoney's made a very, cogent argument about that, it's unreasonable because there are no reasonable alternatives are, I think, a little bit tough, except that it seems to me that what's really going on here is they're trying to make use of a sort of how they're trying to deal with this house in a way that would make it look like a typical sort of large house with a 32-foot roof from the street level, so to speak. I may have gotten the number of feet wrong, but excuse me. And so doing other things would either require, further making this house even bigger of a footprint, doing all sorts of things to the interior of the house and all that kind of stuff. So I think that from that point of view, it seems like this is the reasonable alternative, because it sort of keeps it in character of a large house in Concord with a tall roof, which where most of them have. Excuse me, sorry about that.
Jim, that makes sense. And I think the only reason to struggle with the language here, well, a couple of things, is we're reading it as if it were the variance language because it's the same, but the variance has very specific case law behind it. So I'm comfortable not reading that the same way I would read the variance language, even though it's basically the same words. But if we're granting relief, aren't we granting a special permit? I mean, what other relief are we granting other than a special?
Well, I think I mean, I don't know, but what seems to me, and we can say it's a special permit, but to me, we're granting the very relief it says. It says we can grant relief and therefore we are. The board may grant relief from the above definition. That's what we're doing.
Right. Okay. So that really what you're saying is the standards are within this. We don't have to bump to what the special permit standards are as much because this is basically saying this situation exactly, or this seems to be
Right.
for the situation.
And I think, Elizabeth, that's what you were sort of saying, right? Yes.
Yeah. Any other comments for the board before I open? Okay, let's go ahead and open a public comment. You can use the raised hand feature on Zoom here, and Heather will let you in. Anything? Okay, I will note we got 3 letters of support from abutters. I think, as always, Jim summed it up pretty nicely. I do not have a problem with this, and I think it's a reasonable alternative. I would be inclined to grant it. If anyone has any other comments, I'll close the public hearing and.
So,
I mean, I'm not voting on this, but I wonder what would be something we deny under this provision then, because you've got a big lot, a lot of level space. The only reason they're running this issue is because they built another big addition on the house that has a sub-level garage that is causing the height issue, and now they want to make the house bigger again. And because of their first edition, now they've run into a height issue. So
The garage, Ravi, if I can just interject, the garage pre-existed the last renovation addition. So they didn't add that garage level. That was there when they bought the house.
that's helpful. So they just built the barn kind of structure on top of it.
Exactly. Yeah,
all
that
right,
lowest
that's
grade
helpful.
point existed.
I mean, I see your point, Robbie. Could they do something else? Like, yes. I mean, I don't. But is it a reasonable alternative? Seems to me to be a reasonable, well thought through alternative to something that we may not want, which is expanding the footprint.
Yeah.
And also, I'm not reading it with the same, level of scrutiny as I would at the variance.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're conscious of what we're setting a precedent for. And I think it's, what wins me over is, okay, if the alternative is expanding the footprint, would we rather, I don't think the intent of this bylaw is this house shouldn't be this tall. So yeah, I agree that alternative of expanding the footprint is not what we would say is a reasonable one, because it causes a different issue with the size of the house, that it's almost preferable to go with the well thought through plan that the applicants have presented. So.
And I'd also argue that what kind of wins me over is, 31 feet is the total height from the actual yard. So
3110.
3110.
Yep, less than 35.
So to me, that says something about applying this part of the bylaw to this.
the other thing is, Paul, do you have a sense of how long, I mean, this drop off is fairly unique in that it's a drop off at one end of the house. So, right. So, I mean, that's a pretty long run that this roof that you're proposing would still be within our normal height. It would be the entire length,
roof.
the entire length
length
of the house, and probably the length of the connector to the garage, right?
Yep, that's right.
So I mean, as a percent, this, I think that's another thing that we probably will want to say in our decision is that the drop off is extraordinarily dramatic at one very corner of the house, that the house from the front, the back, the other side and so forth, that's all kind of level ground. It's all basically with that, so that I don't know what the right percentage is, but something like 75 or 80% of the house is actually on ground where this would fit completely within the height requirements that we're making. And it's a very unique situation. And Robbie, I think that I agree with you that there's always a, you know, the nose of the camel under the tent and slit, you know, edge of the wedge. But I think the two that we've seen that we've actually granted were really situations where the topography was very odd and very, very dramatic. And that in point of fact, keeping, you know, granting the variance actually helps it fit better into the neighborhood than not granting the variance, which to me is, it's, again, that's the second part of that test. So I do think it's
Not a variance.
well, not a variance, the relief. But I do think that that's, I just think that's a factor from my point of view.
I think that's a very good point, that both times we granted this relief, that the sites were very unique and with a very dramatic slope, very dramatic drop off, and I think that's an important one to keep in mind.
Any other comments? Do I have a motion?
No, I was going to make motions tonight, but I think since it's a little bit.
Getting a little nervous by the legalese here? Is that
Absolutely.
All I'm trying to do is find the, oh, sorry. I was just trying to find the, I think, by the way, I mean, I hate to throw this wrench into it, but so is it okay for us from a public notice point of view that we're effectively changing? I mean, the relief that was granted here was sought here was for a special permit, but we're actually doing something else.
You are granting a special permit for relief from.
We are?
It is still yes, it is still a special permit. It requires.
All right. I don't know that I agree, but I guess I don't care either.
well, I mean, what other choices of relief would we have?
Well, I have to say is a relief is in the thing, but anyway. I'm going to say that, and they do cite section 6.2.11, so I think that's fine. So I would move. Did we close the public hearing? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I closed the public.
Okay, thank you. I would move that we grant to Aaron Desatnik and Jenna Levy and their expanded family a special permit under 11.6 of the zoning bylaws and relief from the definition of the height of a building under section 6.2.11 of the zoning bylaw to construct an addition that exceeds the maximum 35-foot height by 3.3 feet 2 inches at 5 Ledge Rock Road. And in doing so, that we note that the unique circumstances of this particular house, where there is a dramatic drop off at one end of the house, notwithstanding the fact that 70 or 80% of the house is on level ground, would under 6.2 lead to a height in excess of 35 feet. But that measurement of height, the little application of that measurement of height would be unreasonable because there are no reasonable alternatives available to gain the extra space here, and that the desired relief can be granted without substantial detriment to the neighborhood, and in particular noting the support from three neighbors, the three closest neighbors, and also the fact that it's in keeping with the housing within the neighborhood.
I second that terrific motion.
You would have done the exact same thing, right?
Sure.
That would have been your verbatim one. All right, all in favor, Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Kindermans,
Aye.
Ms. Akers Moore, aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Have a nice
Good
night.
luck.
And, okay, so I need to recuse myself. I don't know how that works on Zoom. I'm gonna turn off everything, and do I have to tell sharing this now? Oh,
What? So can we get it, we'll be able to get her back for purposes
Yes.
of minutes?
I'm
Good. We have like 12 cents a minute. I just soon get there. And so who's chairing this?
So that would be between either Jim or Theo. Who's vice chair or clerk?
We don't, well, the clerk is Theo. Theo's the second.
Then
Good.
We don't have a vice.
Theo gets to chair the meeting.
Oh. Oh.
And Robbie, you are still on, correct?
Yeah, I got kicked out of the Zoom. My internet's
That's okay.
terrible, but I'm on the phone still.
Okay, no worries.
Being that it's past 7:10, I'm opening the public meeting for Military Market LLC for the renewal and amendment of a special permit under section 11.6 of the zoning bylaw to delete condition number 8, requiring the applicant to maintain a list of classes and functions, the date, duration of each class or function, number of attendees, and the number of available parking spaces on the entire site at the start of each class or function, and to amend condition number 13 to renew the special permit from 1 year to 5 years at 77 Lowell Road. That's parcel 1685-2. Anybody here to speak for the applicant? Somebody needs to unmute Jim.
You need to unmute yourself, Jim. There you
How's
go.
that? Hello, everybody. I'm here representing the applicant. My name is Jim White. We were here last year seeking the relief you granted to allow us to use the market in the mezzanine. As you can see from the list attached to the application, we held a few functions before the coronavirus brought everything to a screeching halt. But I think that they were enough to show us that people liked the mezzanine, that it was successful, and that the events could be carried on without causing any disturbance to neighbors, and that there was plenty of parking. So we're here now to ask that the permit be extended for 5 years, and that condition 8, which was just read, be deleted. Just as a practical matter, the ability to track the number of parking spaces on the site, and we saw to follow the number of people in an event, they come and go, is really kind of hard. So we asked that that be deleted, and that's really it.
Good. Thank you. Comments from the board?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I just have a question. So, the permit that granted, the permit that we granted said that we were going to ask you to get this information, to follow that information, but it didn't. That's not what 8 says. So condition 8 says that there will be up to 3 classes or functions a week with less than 35 people, and only 2 classes or functions a month with 35 to 60 people. So the requirement that you track, which is in here, and I'm just zipping through it here to try to find it. I saw it earlier. Is not actually 8. 8 is a limit. 8 is a further limitation on 6, which is the number of attendees limited to 35 people between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. and 60 people between 5 p.m. and 11 p.m. except on a federal holiday.
Jim, may I?
Sure.
I'm not quite sure I follow you. The number 8, at least that I see, is led into by the applicant specified the following, and then there were 8 things. And then the number 8 condition that I'm asking to be deleted appears as on page 4 under the heading approval of.
That's an amendment. That's 43 then, right?
It's based on the amendment is based on the following conditions. Anyhow, that's the item I'm talking about.
Oh. So there's like 2 8s in here. Because if I go up to page 3, 2 and 3, I see. Is that, maybe that was what you had proposed? Okay. All right. I think I got you now.
Yeah, it seems like the second 8 is a condition on a condition to condition 43 almost.
So Jim, just to make sure Mr. White, just want to clarify. So you're still okay with condition 7, up to 3 classes or functions a week with less than 30 people and 2 per month?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. There were so many 8s in here, I didn't realize where I was.
Crazy 8.
Yeah, so to clarify, it's item 8 of condition 43.
Right, okay.
Right,
As opposed to condition 8, which is what I think I was reading.
Correct.
Got it.
So, any other comments, questions from the board? Nobody.
Yeah, this is Ravi. Sorry.
Oh,
Hello.
Sorry, can you hear me?
yeah, one of the apparatus now needs to be muted.
Yeah, okay, I think I solved it.
Perfect.
My question is around the parking, because the way I'm understanding this is we said you can do this for a year and we'll see how it goes. One of the concerns being that your events don't overwhelm the parking lots so that, the other users of it aren't, negatively affected. And so we wanted you to count the parking spaces. And I think what I'm hearing is you weren't really able to count them practically, but you did qualitatively assess that there was plenty of parking available when we had events. Is that right, Jim?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that was my only question.
Okay, thank you. I have none. Well, a question maybe for Ray. Ray, have you heard of any complaints or anything of that nature?
I haven't heard any complaints regarding parking, classes, or any of the events.
Okay.
No complaints.
Thank you. So now I can open it up to members of the public. Anybody raising their hand? Use the raise hand function. Nobody? Okay. No comments from the public, and I close the public comment section of this hearing. Any discussion between the members of the board?
I'll jump in quickly and ask a question. So I just want to, and I'm sorry about misreading the thing before. So the one issue then is keeping track of this information, and the second is going out for 5 years. And I'm just trying to understand what our sort of tradition has been. I know we've often given 1 year, and then sometimes we've done a second year, and we go out to 5 and all that kind of stuff. So Elizabeth, or Ray, is 5 kind of unusual under these circumstances? Not unusual. It's a more of a commercial it's not like this is a home office kind of deal. So I mean, I'd say it is a commercial situation.
I don't really know the answer to that, Jim. What, like I said, dealing with the commercial, I'm not sure what the precedent's been, whether it's been just for another year or 2 years or 5. I really don't have the answer to that. I mean, I could probably do some research, but I wouldn't have that answer tonight.
So, so typically, there have been other commercial businesses and a lot of the other like philanthropic uses or educational uses where they've been given a 1-year permit, and then a couple have come back and there were some, some complaints or some logistic issues, and then the board has only allowed another 1 year or 2 year. And then there are other examples where the board has allowed, a 5-year extension. And then recently there's been, a couple others where after, I think it's, and they have been mostly home occupations where after, like 30 years of repeat extensions, the board has, just granted the permit. I think in this case, for when the Concord market was originally permitted, there was a lot of discussion and speculation surrounding the parking and availability of parking. I know just from my observations, and Ray can speak to this, we're right across the street, that the use of the employee side of the parking on the other side of Walgreens is consistently and heavily used. There are, occasionally, there are certain vendors that I think have to repeatedly be reminded not to park out front, but, both the owners, I think, repeatedly remind them. I have not been made aware of anybody actually complaining about there not being sufficient parking on the site or complaining about any of the functions on the mezzanine level. So I think it, whether you grant it for a 1 year, 2 year, or 5 year, it really comes down to the purpose of that condition specifically was to have something to go on to address that initial concern with the availability of parking, because relief from the parking was granted. So I think the other items under condition 43 do specifically structure the use of the mezzanine level to a point where we have seen that parking is not an issue. So from my perspective, and Ray can provide his, I do not have a concern with it being granted for 5 years.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I tend to agree with you, Elizabeth, and I think that a longer period than 1 year might be warranted, but it's, as you said, and I just caught, I think, the tail end of this when I came on the board, all this permitting and how thoughtful everything was done. I'm not sure whether I'm ready to go to 5 years. I'm willing to extend it to say 3, but I'd love to hear other members of the board weigh in on that.
So I guess in a way that brings up the question, if we're going to do a shorter period, do we still need some kind of tracking of what's happening there so we can, make a further extension decision then? Or, to me, it's sort of like, okay, if we're satisfied that we kind of had the trial period and we're willing to drop the condition 8, then
Item 8 of condition 43.
made of condition 43.
So that might be a very, that might be that compromise that Theo is looking for, where you drop item 8,
Right.
but not go to a 5-year renewal, go to a 3-year renewal. That's that compromise. I do think the other specific items under condition 43 are structured to a level that helps to alleviate that issue of there not being sufficient parking. So I don't see what item 8, having the applicant do that, provides the board any additional information that is relevant. We haven't seen that.
So, so if we did a shorter period, we'd sort of just be assessing at that point, have we now had complaints or have, issues or concerns been raised by others that make us rethink renewing the permit at that point. We don't need again to assess the, detailed list of events. I think that.
Correct. Yeah, you would go back and probably reassess some of those other items under 43, but the types of events have not triggered any parking issue or comments back to town staff.
Correct, and thanks for clarifying that, Elizabeth. And that was I think item number 8 under condition 43 is indeed looks to be very onerous, and I also don't know if you were to do that, what data it will give you. It'll give you the data that you had an issue somewhere, but I think we'll hear of that issue anyways, which is an issue. So I can see removing that item, but then still keep a little bit of a shorter time frame, not the full 5 years, and reassess everything in say 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I think that makes some sense too, in the sense that we also got roughly a half a year of information, and then ran into a pandemic, and we're likely to have several more months where they're not going to be able to have any kind of gatherings of any sort of size up there. And so to really understand the original year was to understand the parking situation, notwithstanding anything else, and we didn't have a lot of time to do that assessment. So, but I agree that there's really no reason for condition 8 under Article 43. And I'm tend to favor Theo's notion that 3 years under condition 13, which is also, item 13, which is also under condition 43, I believe, if I've now read this correctly, finally, that going to 3 is probably the right thing to do.
I agree. 3 feels a lot better than 5.
Thank you. That said, could I have a motion, please?
Go for it, Ravi.
Yeah, Ravi, this is your chance.
I make a motion that we approve the application of Military Market for the renewal and amendment of a special permit under section 11.6 of the zoning bylaw to delete item 8 under condition 43, requiring the applicant to maintain a list of classes and functions and certain other information, and amend condition number 13 to renew the special permit for a period of 3 years at 77 Lowell Road.
Yeah, I think it's item 13 under condition 43. Yes, no, yes.
Yes.
Okay. I second that.
Now, may I have a vote now? Ravi?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Chair Terry Kinnemans votes aye.
Great.
You?
Thank you.
Now that I asked the board to jump to the release of
All
the
right.
performance guarantee for 77 Lowell Road, since the chair has to recuse herself from that as well. So part of the Concord Market, they were required to do off-site improvements, and there was a timing issue as far as the weather and being able to complete those off-site improvements. So they had to post a bond, and those off-site improvements, they have been completed. The Public Works Engineering Division has reviewed and found those off-site improvements within the road right-of-way acceptable, and does not have any issues with the release of the performance bond.
We need a motion for that too.
You do need a motion to release the performance bond as well, yes.
I guess, Theo, you ready for that, or any other discussion?
Yeah, I was just asking whether the board was going to have any questions on this.
No, very
No?
satisfied.
So then I entertain a motion.
I move that the board authorize the release of the letter of credit for 77 Lowell Road as the town planner has described.
Second.
Mr. Farya,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Kinnemans votes aye. Motion passes, and the letter of credit can be released.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yep,
Okay, great.
we missed you.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking, but here I am. Back under, can we just do quickly the warrant article discussion? Because I don't think it requires much discussion, because they have now, the issue I think was mainly moving the permitting granting authority from us to the planning board for PRDs, and they have taken that out. Elizabeth, I guess there was some comment that people wanted it to stay with us, which is.
Yep, so there was at the initial public hearing, I think it's in February, but yep, there was some discussion about that, and so following that, the planning board discussed that option, and felt that it's having it remain with the zoning board of appeals is a perfectly acceptable process, and
Great.
so they will be amending on the floor of town meeting to strike that proposed amendment and have that remain the permit granting authority with a recommendation from the planning board as it currently stands in the zoning bylaw. All other proposed amendments, they are going to proceed and move forward with asking town meeting about.
Okay. I don't know if others have. I've reviewed those other amendments to the PRD section. I didn't have any issue that I thought we should take up amongst us, but if anyone else has any issues, no?
No, I didn't have any issues, but I thought it was pretty vague, the part on the energy conservation and all. There were no standards set. It's like, yeah, you got to do some green stuff, but that to me felt very vague. Yeah, there was no standard set to what you need to meet or where you need to go.
So they had an extensive discussion regarding that, and it did start out with the same observation you have about the standards, it is and will always be my recommendation that under a zoning bylaw, there's different lead standards, there's HERS ratings, there's a lot of different items that you do not put those types of standards into a zoning bylaw because they're fluid, they change, technology changes, things change, and to put that type of standard in a zoning bylaw, it could just kind of like the stretch code or the building code, you know, it changes every single year. So you would have to go back to town meeting and get currently a 2/3 vote every single year if a particular energy code standard changed or a HERS rating standard changed or technology changed. So, the PRD is still a special permit. It's still discretionary. It is based partly qualitative and, partly quantitative, and, a special permit is discretionary, and a lot of it is subjective on, how a project moves forward. So that they did have a very long discussion about that very specific topic about standards, and ultimately that is why the wording is the way it is they're proposing.
Fair enough. Thank you. Yeah, and I was totally in favor when we had the discussion with the planning board, the joint meeting. Now, like feels like a year or two ago. I was totally in favor of indeed moving the special permit granting authority to the planning board. But now, having gone through a few, and especially with one of them, where I think I think we served our purpose, and this process now is I think is good.
So did the board have any questions on any of the others? The planning board is not moving Article 33, the two-family dwelling. And that was specifically all petitioners and all, the planning board was asked, are there ones that, could be deferred to the next year? We're still hopeful that, so there will be a the additional dwelling unit and the PRD, there will be, I think other than those two, all the remaining, there is a good chance they may be on the consent agenda. We're not quite sure yet, but the board is not moving Article 33. And we have also had confirmation that the petitioner for the moratorium is not going to move that article as well.
So just so I have the net of that is that if all that happens, then the PRD authority continues to be, last PRD authority continues to be with us, right? Okay, and then hammerhead lots and things like that are gonna get, yes, okay, perfect.
That's great. I don't have any other questions. Anyone else? All right. So the minutes, I reviewed them and submitted my comments. Is there anything else anyone wants to say about them?
I think I reviewed them and submitted a bunch of comments, but then Heather sent them out. So I think they seem to reflect whatever my comments were. So that's fine.
Great. So do I need a motion to approve those?
Sure. Oh, Theo, your chance.
Come on.
All it is.
Okay. I'll make and I can make one motion for them all, right?
So long as you list the dates.
Okay. So I will make a motion to approve the minutes of February the 13th, March the 12th, April the 9th, May 14th, and June 11th.
As written.
Right. As written.
Second.
Mr. Kindermans.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Akers Moore. Aye. Great. All right, last thing, Black Horse Place, release of performance guaranteed.
So similar to all other PRDs, they have gone through and completed all of the work for the project. They have submitted as-built plans that have been reviewed by town staff. The developer has transferred everything to the homeowners association, and so they are now requesting release of the performance guarantee.
Well, this is the last one from them? This is it?
Yes.
Cool.
Questions, comments?
I assume Ray and Elizabeth, you guys are all happy with everything? Everything's in place? Yes?
Great.
I make a motion to release the performance guarantee of Black Horse Place.
Second.
Mr. Kindermans.
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Akers Moore, aye. That's it. I'm going to watch Shrek in the parking lot of the high school where they're having a drive-in.
All right. So,
Okay.
well, a quick thing. Jim, you're not going to be there. You said next meeting,
Right.
the 10th. I have a work conflict. I also have a hearing that I need to attend. Luckily, both meetings are Zoom, so with a little luck, my work meeting is late, which I actually am expecting that it's late. So I might not be able to fully attend the ZBA meeting. So an FYI, Ravi and Stuart.
I should be here. I should be available.
Thank you.
Stuart.
What is the date? I'm sorry. Right now, I don't have anything I'm aware of. It.
Good. It's September 10th.
Heather, you'll do a
September
quorum
10th. I don't have anything planned right now for September 10th.
Great.
We'll assume we're okay, but Heather, you'll do a formal quorum check at some point. Great. All right, if that's it, motion to adjourn, as in I'm turning off my camera. Good night, everyone.
Night.
Take care. Good night.
Aye.
Bye.
Amen.